Welcome to Rollin with Ray. I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and hope you have a great time with families and friends this week. In this episode of Rollin with Ray, you will meet Chris and Eddie Canales, who created and formed Gridiron Heroes Spinal Cord Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The foundation provides immediate as well as long-term resources and support to individuals sustaining a catastrophic spinal cord injury through activities associated with high school football. I will interview the father and son duo as they describe their challenges of life and, of course, the foundation. At this time, it's my honor and my privilege to introduce you to Eddie and Chris Canales. Guys, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So, Chris, can you tell me a little bit about how you became a quadriplegic?
I broke my neck playing football, and about 21 years ago, on November 2nd, 2001, my senior year of high school, it was our last home game, fourth quarter, 4 minutes left in the game. I made a touchdown saving tackle, but along with that, I broke my neck making that tackle. So from there, life changed completely.
Did you sustain that broken neck at the C5, C6 vertebrae or C4
Yes,
or
sir.
5?
Yeah, broke my C5, C6. Yes.
Man, I know the feeling because I'm a C5-6 quadriplegic, and I know exactly what you're going through and stuff. Chris, you stayed in a rehab center for several months. Can you describe to our viewers what the hardest part of that rehab stay was?
Well, when I got injured, it was during the holidays. So I stayed in ICU for about a month. So during Thanksgiving, I was in ICU, which was not fun. And then right after that, going to rehab during Christmas was not fun either. So being away from family and being away from like your friends in school, that was really hard. One of the hardest things for me was I was an all-state punter and I had scholarships to play football, and everything's just taken away. So being in rehab for about 3.5 months is just time thinking about that really brought me down. So just the isolation part of it, not being able to see friends that much. Yeah, I mean, it was just hard. Just the rehab part of it was hard too.
You know what, I can relate because when I got hurt, it was the spring of 1981, and I was going into the summer months, and I stayed in the rehab for 5 months. And yes, I can relate to all the things that you're talking about, some of the isolations. But you know what, the bottom line is I had a strong family support, I'm sure as well as you did. And without that family support, there's no way I would have been able to get through what I got through. And I'm sure it's probably the same situation with you.
Yeah, Chris never was by himself. Either I was there, my wife was there, my parents were there. Somebody was always with Chris at the time. And so that family support is very big. For us, it was very big.
Absolutely. You got to have that strong family support and the love from your families and relatives. So I totally understand. Eddie, can you tell me how you started and why you started Gridiron Heroes?
Yeah, when Chris got hurt, coaches didn't know what to do, where to go, how to help. They didn't really have understanding of what a spinal cord injury entailed. And, there was coaches that were under the impression that Chris go to rehab for 6 to 8 weeks and be back out there on the field. And so there was really no help or support system. And how we ended up starting Gridiron Heroes was probably at Chris's worst point. The 1-year anniversary date of his injury, he started to shut down, didn't want to eat, didn't want to do therapy, and just didn't want to get out of the house or anything. But, we would still watch football on TV. And just to get him out of the house, I took him to a state championship football game. And it was being played at the Alamo Dome. I said, let's go to a football game. So hopefully to, snap him out of that downward spiral, I took him to that game. And as I guess the Lord would have it, we ended up witnessing another young man, Corey Fulbright from Everman, go down with a spinal injury. And Chris really knew right away because we were watching through binoculars and didn't see any movement in his hands or arm. And at that point, it was 1 year to his anniversary date of his injury. And it was the first high school game that he had been to since his injury. And he just turned to me and said, "Dad, I know what he's going to go through. You know what the family's going to go through. We need to go help." And so that was the inspiration behind starting Gridiron Heroes and being there for families. We've never looked back. We've just, we get a call, we try to go and visit with the families and guide them through the process, all the paperwork, making sure that they know who their case manager is and the case manager is doing their job to help that family. And so, we try to be there for those families and guide them through the whole process.
Absolutely, I totally understand that. Eddie, can you tell us how many families the foundation has helped?
Over the last 18 years, we've now up to 40 families.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So, of course, we'd like to be able to not have to help any families, during football season, but we're averaging anywhere from 2 to 3 a year here in Texas. Nationwide, anywhere from 10 to 12 a year nationwide. On the rise this year, last few years, has been traumatic brain injuries. There has been quite a few because we get those calls for that as well. It's traumatic brain injury has gotten a lot more attention, or concussions and things like that.
Can you also talk a little bit to let our viewers know about how much a financial burden this is put on the family due to a spinal cord injury? Because when I got hurt, had my mom and dad had not insurance, I don't know what we would have done. But
Right.
I can tell you it was in the hundreds of $1,000s in,
Yes.
in medical bills. But can you exactly explain to our
a lot of
viewers?
times, a lot of people don't realize that with our kids going in school, not all schools are required to have catastrophic policies. That's if you're in a larger school district, a lot of times they will carry it, but some of the smaller school districts don't have a catastrophic policy. They just have a basic $10,000 policy, which really, it doesn't cover much. It won't even cover one night in ICU. For the most part, to give you an example, our first hospital bill was $765,000.
Wow.
Our second bill was almost $780,000. It was very high. And we had 3 bills that big. I mean, it was a lot. But, and of course, my wife, and one of the reasons I became Chris's caregiver was because my wife had my 2 boys on her insurance plan. She's an educator, and so she had the boys on her insurance plan. And it was just a matter of economics, in a sense that in order to keep the insurance, she had to continue working. So I ended up making the decision that I would become Chris's caregiver and take care of him.
Wow. I just wanted to make sure that our viewers know that it's a financial burden that is placed on the family. And
When it's not initially just when it happens, it's life, long-term, yeah.
Long-term.
Because there are things that a lot of times people don't realize that Medicaid or insurance won't pay for. And so I'll give you an example. One of the young men that we had was 14 years old when he got hurt. He was a football player. He outgrew his chair in 2 years, but Medicaid and insurance stipulates you have to be in a wheelchair for 5 years before you can get a new one. Well, he was a full quad. He controlled that wheelchair with his hand. In order to get him a new wheelchair, that was a $45,000 piece of equipment. We've been able to donate vans as well. Wheelchair accessible vehicles. Right now, a new one costs $83,000.
Correct.
But we've done 15 of those vans at a cost of anywhere between $54,000 to $75,000.
That's correct. That's unbelievable, and I appreciate you guys doing that. And so the funds that y'all do raise actually goes back into the families. That goes on and helps support the long-term care for, like example, the handicap wheelchair accessible vans, and also medical bills that may be outstanding. Is that
Yeah,
is that
not
correct?
so much the medical bills, it's more of the equipment that they need. the supplies that they need. A lot of times what happens initially, like I said, when we get the call, we'll go and visit with the family at the hospital. What we'll end up doing is, once we know the severity of the injury, then we can go back to that football community and guide them on how best to help that family. Because there's people that want to help but don't know what to do. And so, again, as we know the severity of the injury, then we can go back to that football community and, make sure that they understand that, there are some modifications that need to be done in the house. We need to raise money for that. Modifications that can be done, for the restroom facilities, and that, money needs to be raised for that. So we can kind of guide those families in that football community and go from there. Where we come back into play a lot of times is after they graduate from high school, because there's always a little bit of help the first 6 months a year. Then it kind of goes off a little bit and withers down. But then when they graduate from high school, that support system is gone. And that's where we really come back into play. And, we keep up with our families. That's one of the things kind of a little bit different from us is that we keep up with our families,
That's great. Does your foundation just help football players, or do they help other organizations or other sports? Like if somebody gets hurt playing soccer or baseball, is it just directly football?
Yeah, financially, it's our incorporation, our letters of incorporation states that it's got to be football injury, but it doesn't cost us anything to be able to guide the families and give them someone that they can talk to. Again, like going back to that school, we've had calls for a cheerleader, we've had calls for a baseball player sliding in a home plate that broke his neck, calls for a lacrosse player, wrestler, so we can go and guide those families and help them and help that community on helping that family. So that doesn't cost us anything. And if we can do that, we're making a difference.
That's great.
Sometimes initially when we started, it wasn't about raising money. It was more about just being there for the family, for having someone that they can talk to. Absolutely. And then for Chris, to be able to have, somebody else that's going through it and living it every day that they can talk to.
Sure.
And so, that's the bond that we create with all of these kids, and I say kids now, some of them are grown men like Chris now, I keep saying kids because when we first started with them, they were kids, but,
Sure.
A lot of them have grown and have been injured for a while now.
Does Gridiron Heroes help athletes outside of Texas, or
Yes.
and are y'all nationwide?
Yeah, we're nationwide now. We don't have any affiliates or anything like that, nationwide. But again, if we can help the families, unfortunately, sometimes we've been able to help families with funeral arrangements and things like that. What we are facing a lot of times is we have a lot of single moms out there. Again, we were blessed because my wife allowed us basically to do what we do because she had a good job. But there are a lot of single moms out there that are struggling. We used to send Walmart cards before the COVID hit, when we were raising funds and stuff before COVID, we would send $100 a month in the form of a Walmart card. Doesn't sound like much, but that $100, when we had to cut it off after we ran out of funds, I had to write letters, but I got a lot of emails and text messages and said, thanking me for all the years that we've been able to do that. He said, you don't realize how much you've been able to put food on our table by doing that.
That's awesome.
So it's just the little things like that, that we've been able to do. And with sometimes, we just do it. Again, we keep up with our families and we let them know that, hey, if we have funds, we're going to share it with you, and so that's what we try to do.
That's great that y'all actually do that and give back to the community, and especially those type of resources that the people can reach out to.
I tell you, one of the things, an example of a young man that we donated a van to, it's always touching because it's life-changing when they have a van like that. They did a TV interview, a news station interviewed this young man, DeAndre Preston, and they asked him, what's the first thing you'd like to do when you get that van? He said, well, man, I ain't been out of my house in 2 years.
Wow.
He said, so the first thing I'd like to do is be able to go through a Jack in the Box and order a hamburger. Something as simple as that we take for granted that can be life-changing for these families,
Wow. Well, I can recall when I first got hurt, there was a local dealership by a guy by the name of Frank Parra. He actually donated a van to me that was fully handicap accessible with the wheelchair lift, and I was able to drive, and so with hand controls, and so had I not had that vehicle, I don't know what I would have done, because I guess I'd be transferring in and out of cars all the way throughout my high school days and college days. But Frank Parra actually helped me get my first vehicle when I was newly injured. Can you tell me about one of your programs called Heroes on the Road? I've heard a lot about that program up here in Dallas, and I know y'all are going to be spending some time up here this weekend at a college football game.
Yes, I go out, get some sponsorships. So the Heroes on the Road is be able to get our families and take them to football games, you know. Chris and I do a lot of traveling during the off season. We go to coaching clinics, athletic trainer conferences, AD conferences, but we get to meet a lot of times the head coaches for some of these universities. And so they appreciate what we do and have invited us to bring some of the guys to the games. But it also, you know, so I'll go out and I'll get some sponsorships to allow us to do that. And so what we're able to do is keep up with our families, you know, come together, we have a nice bond, and tailgate with, you know, someone there at the game, and we are able to keep up with the families. That way we know how else we can help the families. And, you know, that, again, that kind of makes us a little bit different, because we are, you know, close knit. I've got 40 families, but all of them, you know, we know each other and we keep up with each other.
That's great.
I've got a, you know, group of kids out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We have another group, 10 to 12 in the Houston area, 10 to 12 in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And then, you know, we have some down in the Valley, about 3 in the West Texas, and then 4 between San Antonio and Austin, with a couple of, you know, here in this area as well.
That's great that they're still being involved, and they're still being able to go and participate and actually attend a high school and college game. Is that correct? You take them to college and high school games?
It's basically just to get them out of the house and let them mingle with each other, you know, it's have somebody else to talk to.
That's great. How involved are you guys in the San Antonio Quarterback Club? I've been reading a lot about that too, but I guess they meet on a monthly basis during the fall. And tell us a little bit about the San Antonio Quarterback Club.
So we've been involved with them for about 16 years now. It's basically one of the oldest quarterback clubs in the nation. And it's a bunch of businessmen who get together and basically talk talk about football, and we bring in speakers, coaches, or people involved with football or different sports, and help them come in and we just listen to them speak. And I mean, we have a good time.
That's great. That's awesome.
They've raised money for Gridiron Heroes. We're the nonprofit that they support. And, you know, it's been a good partnership for us in that sense. They raise about $10,000 for us each year. So
Great.
it's a, you know.
Can you guys tell me how you guys help the writers of a movie TV show called Friday Night Lights?
Well, when Friday Night Lights was being researched, Peter Berg, the movie director, was researching here in Texas, because Friday Night Lights, you know, it's about Texas football. So he was following a team and was on the sidelines when he witnessed David Edwards go down with a spinal injury. And it affected him. We didn't know really why at the time, why it affected him. You know, we got to meet him and he said he wanted to help Gridiron Heroes and he wanted to help that young man. And so at the time, we finally realized that when he was an actor, when Peter Berg was an actor coming up, he had played the role of Dennis Byrd, the paralyzed football player from the Jets. So he had an idea of what this young man was going to go through. And so it did affect him. So he invited Chris and I to be in the movie Friday Night Lights. We went to the shoots in Odessa and Houston and Austin. And we were part of the movie shoot. And then when they decided to take it and turn it into a TV series, Pete asked us to work with the writers of the show. And so, if you've seen the show, you know that in the first episode, someone suffers a spinal injury.
Sure.
And so part of that storyline is.
That's
is
great.
Chris's.
That's great. That's great that you guys are giving back to that. One last question I have before I wrap this up is that if somebody that's out there listening and watching, who do they need to contact? And can you give us your website of who they need to contact regarding Gridiron Heroes?
You can visit our website at www.gridironheroes.org, or you could contact basically my dad at 210 849-9250. I mean, we get calls pretty much 24/7. So I mean, we're up late. It's another thing with a lot of our guys is we're night owls, or we're up pretty late. Usually around 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning. So I mean, call us anytime if you need help. Hopefully, you don't have to call us about an injury, but we're there to help if you do.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time, and I'm appreciative that all the great things you are doing in San Antonio and across the state of Texas, and of course nationwide. I appreciate all your help and everything that y'all are doing to give back to the community. Thank you very much. Should you have any questions, please contact me at raysertabook@gmail.com or visit my website called www.thelifeididn'texpect.com. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and on my YouTube channel called Rollin with Ray. Make sure to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching and listening to me. I look forward to inspiring you, my followers, in my next podcast. Thank you very much.